My name is Olivia Cortez. I've served in the U.S. Army for over 15 years. I've been deployed twice, earned my medals, and learned how to keep calm when things go south. But nothing in basic training or combat prepared me for the battlefield that started inside my own house. When I came back from my last deployment, I was finally ready to enjoy something close to a normal life. I had my son, Mason, 8 years old, smart, funny, a little clumsy like me. I had a small house in Virginia, close enough to the base but far enough from the noise. My husband had passed years ago in an accident, so it was just Mason and me, or so I thought. My sister Brianna had moved in a few months earlier. She was going through a rough patch divorce, money problems, a bit of finding herself at age 35. I didn't mind helping. Family helps family, right? She took care of Mason while I worked long shifts or got called to the base at night. It was convenient, and I thought Mason loved having his aunt around. At first, everything looked normal. Brianna helped with homework, cooked dinner, kept the house clean. She liked to tell everyone she was holding the fort while her soldier sister served the country. That kind of talk made her feel useful, and honestly, it made me proud too. But after a while, I started noticing small things. Mason wasn't laughing as much. He used to run to the door when I came home. Now he just mumbled, "Hey, Mom," and stayed in his room. I thought maybe he was just growing up. Kids get moody. But one night after I tucked him in, he said, "Mom, can you stay home this week?" I told him I couldn't. There was a mandatory readiness drill at the base. He nodded, but I saw the fear in his eyes. It wasn't disappointment, it was fear. When I asked what was wrong, he said, "It's nothing. I just miss you." And then he hugged me tighter than usual. I didn't think much of it, but that hug felt different, like he was holding on to me for protection. Over the next few days, that feeling got worse. He started having nightmares. Woke up crying, sometimes wetting the bed, which hadn't happened in years. I caught Brianna scolding him one morning, her voice low but sharp. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said. "A boy your age crying like a baby." When I stepped in, she smiled and said, "Just trying to toughen him up, Liv. You know how boys are." That phrase hit me. Toughen him up. It reminded me too much of the drill sergeants who yelled about discipline but never understood compassion. The more I watched, the more I realized Mason changed only when Brianna was around. When she left the house to run errands, he was lighter, talked more, ate better. But when she came back, he went silent again, shrinking into himself. It didn't make sense. Brianna had always been good with kids, or at least I thought she was. One Friday night, I came home from the base later than usual. It was close to midnight. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. As I walked down the hall, I noticed Brianna's door was open, but her bed was empty. The light under Mason's door caught my eye. I heard whispers. I froze for a moment, not sure what to think. Maybe she was checking on him? I took a quiet step closer. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "You know what happens when you disobey, right?" I didn't hear Mason answer, just a sound like a soft sob. I pushed the door open a few inches, just enough to see her silhouette standing over his bed. My body went still. She was holding something in her hand, looked like a slipper or a belt, I couldn't tell. I stepped back before she could see me, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every instinct I had screamed to burst in and stop her, but I needed to be sure. I needed proof. The next morning, Brianna acted like nothing had happened. She made pancakes, talked about grocery sales, and even asked if I could help her pay her phone bill. Mason sat at the table quiet, eyes puffy. When I asked if he slept well, he just said, "I'm fine, Mom." Later that day, I drove to the PX and bought a small security camera. Technically, it was meant for home safety motion activated, Wi-Fi accessible, easy to hide. I told myself it was to keep an eye on the house when I was away, but deep down, I knew why I was buying it. When Brianna took Mason out for ice cream that afternoon, I installed the camera in his room. I placed it behind a small model airplane on his bookshelf, angled toward the bed. I tested the feed on my phone, it worked perfectly. I hated myself for doing it, for spying in my own home, but something inside me couldn't stay quiet anymore. That night, I pretended to go to sleep early. Around 11:30, I opened the camera app on my phone. My stomach clenched. The feed showed Brianna entering Mason's room, closing the door slowly behind her. At first, She just stood there, watching him. Then she pulled the blanket off him and said something I couldn't hear clearly. Mason sat up, terrified. She leaned in close, and even without sound, I could read her lips. Don't make a sound. I didn't breathe. I watched her raise her hand. The slap was fast. Mason flinched but didn't cry out. She hit him again, then grabbed him by the arm and shook him hard. He tried to curl into the corner of the bed. I saw her mouth move again. This is what happens when you talk back. My throat closed. I wanted to run in there, but every instinct as a soldier told me to stay put. Evidence first, action second. Emotion clouds judgment. But in that moment, I wasn't a soldier. I was a mother watching her son get hurt. I recorded every second. My hands shook as I watched her walk out after nearly 20 minutes like nothing had happened. The next morning, Brianna greeted me with coffee and a smile. "Rough night?" she asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Didn't sleep much." She laughed. "Maybe you should try my chamomile tea." I looked at her, holding back everything inside me. Years of discipline and training were the only things keeping me from losing control. I just nodded and went to wake Mason for school. He looked exhausted, moving like his body hurt. "Mom," he whispered when Brianna left the room, "please don't leave me tonight." Ich knelt beside him. "Why, sweetheart?" He hesitated. "Because she gets mad when you're not here." Those words hit harder than any bullet I've ever faced. I told him I'd be home that night, no matter what. And as he left for school, I stood in the doorway watching them walk away, my son holding the hand of the woman I now knew I couldn't trust. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain: I wasn't letting another night like that happen ever again. The next morning, I didn't touch the camera feed. I couldn't. I just sat at the kitchen table staring at the cold cup of coffee, wondering how to face what I already knew. The sun was coming through the blinds, but the house still felt dark. Brianna hummed some old pop song while packing Mason's lunch, like she hadn't just turned into someone else at midnight. When Mason walked into the kitchen, I noticed the bruise near his wrist. It wasn't big, but it was there. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. He froze for a second. "I tripped on my backpack." Before I could say anything, Brianna cut in, cheerful as ever. "That boy's as clumsy as his mom used to be. Remember when you ran into that mailbox, Liv?" I smiled weakly. She was good at this, too good. That morning I didn't go to the base. I called in and said I had a personal emergency. It wasn't a lie. I waited until they left for school, then opened the footage again. It was worse than I remembered. I watched the whole thing this time, frame by frame, every slap, every flinch. Her face was stone cold. She didn't look angry, she looked controlled, like she thought this was teaching him something. When it ended, she tucked him in like a loving aunt and whispered something I couldn't quite hear. I replayed the moment and turned the volume up as much as possible. Her voice came through faintly. "If you tell your mom, it'll get worse." That's when I knew this wasn't a one-time thing. She'd done it before. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the same kind of calm I used to get before a mission. My hands stopped shaking. My breathing slowed. I started thinking in steps, not feelings. Step 1. Protect Mason. Step 2. Document everything. Step 3. Bring in the law. I copied the footage onto 2 flash drives, one for me, one for evidence. Then I uploaded it to a private cloud folder. You don't survive the military by trusting a single line of defense. When Mason came home that afternoon, I met him at the door. He looked surprised to see me. "You're home early," he said, like he wasn't sure it was safe to sound happy. "Yeah," I replied. "Drills got canceled." Brianna followed him in, carrying grocery bags. "You should have told me you were off today. I would have grabbed wine." "I'm fine," I said, keeping my tone even. Dinner that night felt like a performance. Mason ate quietly. Brianna told a story about some neighbor she met, how the poor thing didn't know how to discipline her kids. She looked at me while saying it, smiling like she was testing me. I stared right back. "Discipline's not supposed to leave bruises," I said. She froze for half a second, then laughed. "You always were the sensitive one." Later, when Mason went to bed, I sat on the couch pretending to watch TV. I could hear Brianna pacing upstairs. Around 10:45, she stopped moving. I checked the camera app again. She was in her room, lights off. I waited another 30 minutes. Then, Sure enough, she slipped out and headed for Mason's room. This time, I didn't just watch. I recorded a live clip with sound. She whispered the same lines as before. You don't tell. You learn. Mason tried to say something through his tears, and she slapped him again, telling him, You think your mom's going to believe you? She never believed me either. That last part stopped me cold. She wasn't just cruel, she was projecting something. When she left the room, I shut off the feed. My chest felt like it was going to burst. I'd dealt with soldiers in breakdowns, interrogations gone bad, civilians in panic. But I'd never felt rage like this, the kind that burned slow and steady. The next morning, I went to talk to someone who'd understand both the military and the law, Sergeant Marcus Ellison. He'd worked with me during my deployment and now ran security for the county courthouse. If there was anyone who could guide me without gossip spreading through the base, it was him. We met at a diner off Route 17, the kind where the coffee tastes like asphalt but the waitress calls you sweetheart. Liv, he said, sliding into the booth. You look like hell. I've seen worse, I replied. Not lately, I bet. I told him everything. Not the emotional parts, just the facts. The camera, the footage, the threats. He listened quietly, only interrupting to ask for details. When I finished, he leaned back. You need to file a family abuse petition. Get a temporary order first. CPS will take it from there. I was hoping to handle it quietly, I said. Quiet doesn't work with people like that, he replied. You've got a duty to report, Liv. You're a soldier, but you're also a mother. And if this goes on, it's not just his body that'll break, it's his trust. He was right. I hated that he was right. After that meeting, I drove straight to the county clerk's office. I filled out every line of that form with precision, dates, times, incidents, attachments. The clerk asked if I wanted an emergency protective order. I said yes. The judge signed it within the hour. I was walking out with the papers in my hand when Brianna called. Hey, she said sweetly. Everything okay? You didn't answer my text. I kept my voice calm. Yeah, I had errands. What's up? Just wanted to remind you Mason's dentist appointment is next week. Got it, I said. Thanks. Her tone shifted slightly, suspicion creeping in. You sound off. Everything good? Everything's fine, I said, hanging up before she could keep digging. When I got home, Mason was coloring at the table. Brianna was sitting on the couch watching TV, like she hadn't just been served legal papers an hour ago. She must not have checked her mail yet. I looked at her, wondering how someone could switch faces that fast from cruelty to calm, from abuser to caretaker. Mason, I said softly, how about we go for a drive? He looked at Brianna, like he needed permission. That broke my heart. Go ahead, she said, pretending to smile. You two need some bonding time. We drove until the road turned quiet, near a small lake outside of town. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a minute. Mason fidgeted with his seatbelt. Mom, am I in trouble? He asked. No, baby, I said. You're safe now. You understand me. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. What about Aunt Bree? I swallowed hard. You won't have to see her for a while. Some people, they don't know how to treat others right. And when that happens, grown-ups have to step in. He looked at me, his voice small. Are you mad at me? Mad at you? I almost laughed. No, honey. Never. I'm mad at myself for not seeing it sooner. For the first time in weeks, he leaned on my arm, quiet but peaceful. That night, after putting him to bed in my room, I sat by the window with my phone, waiting for the inevitable knock on the door when she found out. My gun was on the table not because I wanted to use it, but because the Army taught me one thing: never underestimate someone cornered. At 11:07, the doorbell rang. My hand went straight to the safety switch. Old habits. I took a slow breath and looked through the peephole. Brianna stood outside, her hair messy, her expression calm, too calm for someone who'd just been hit with a protective order. I opened the door halfway. It's late, I said. She tilted her head, smiling like she was auditioning for Most Innocent Sister of the Year. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway. Where's Mason? Asleep. Her tone hardened. You can't keep him from me, Olivia. You have no right. That's funny, I said flatly. Because the judge seems to think I do. For the first time, she dropped the act. Her face changed anger, disbelief, and something else underneath. Fear. You've lost your mind, she hissed. You think you can just ruin me? I didn't ruin you, I said. You did that yourself. She took a step closer. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. The motion light over the porch clicked on, bathing her face in a harsh glow. She blinked, her jaw tight. You always thought you were the hero, didn't you? The soldier saving the world. But you're just like Dad, self-righteous and blind. That name hit me like a flash grenade. I hadn't heard her bring up our father in years. Before I could respond, she turned and walked off the porch, her car tires screeching as she sped away. I locked the door and leaned against it. My pulse was pounding, but my mind was clear. Every instinct in me was awake now, every small signal, every off rhythm in the environment. The army drilled it into me. When something feels wrong, it probably is. The next day, I went to the precinct to drop off the footage. Detective Clara Jensen met me in a quiet room that smelled like burnt coffee and copier toner. She'd seen things her eyes gave that away, but even she flinched watching the video. Jesus, she muttered, pausing the playback. That's your sister? Yes. Answer 1. And the kid's 8? Yes. She shook her head. You did the right thing coming here. We'll process this and loop in CPS immediately. I handed her the flash drive and my written statement. She promised to call when the investigation formally opened. Before I left, she looked at me and said, I have seen a lot of abusers try to twist things. Stay calm, stay documented, and don't engage her directly. I'm a soldier, I said. I know the rules. She smirked. Good. Because this one's going to be a long campaign. When I got home, Mason was coloring on the living room floor. The TV played quietly, some cartoon he liked, and for a brief second, everything looked normal again. Then he looked up at me with that small, nervous glance he always gave before speaking. Did Aunt Bree call you? Why? She texted me on my tablet at school. She said you're making her look like a bad person. I crouched next to him. Did you text her back? He shook his head quickly. No, I just deleted it. Good boy, I thought, but the worry in my chest deepened. She was pushing boundaries already. I called the detective again and told her about the contact. We'll include it in the report, she said. Don't respond to her messages and keep the device as evidence. We'll request a no-contact clause extension. For the next few days, I worked from home under family leave. Every hour, I checked the perimeter cameras, changed passwords, and kept my service pistol locked but within reach. Mason stayed close to me, closer than ever. He followed me around the house, always asking small questions. Can I sit here? Can I help you cook? Will you stay home again tomorrow? It was heartbreaking and comforting at the same time. The Army had taught me to protect my unit, but this was my unit now, a scared 8-year-old trying to rebuild his trust. Then, on the 4th day, I noticed something strange. The security system pinged my phone. Motion detected near the garage at 2 a.m. I opened the camera feed. Nothing but shadows. Probably a stray cat, I told myself. But the next morning, I found the side gate slightly open. I went full military mode, checked locks, inspected tracks, made sure no entry points were compromised. Mason asked what I was doing, and I told him I was just being thorough. He seemed to understand. Around noon, Detective Jensen called. We served your sister the notice this morning. She didn't take it well. I bet she didn't. She claims you're framing her, said you doctored the footage. We've seen this before, abusers trying to gaslight the process. Don't let it shake you. It won't. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and started compiling every message, every timestamp, every clip. I made a digital log, complete with metadata and witness notes. I'd seen too many cases fall apart because someone underestimated the paperwork. Not this one. By evening, I tried to bring back some normal routine. We made spaghetti for dinner. Mason actually smiled when he sprinkled the cheese himself. For a brief second, I saw my son again, the goofy kid who once wore his superhero cape to school. After dinner, I tucked him in, staying by the door as he fell asleep. He looked peaceful, finally. I turned off the light and went downstairs. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text read, "You can't hide him from me forever." My blood ran cold. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, saved it, and forwarded it to Jensen. Within minutes, she texted back, "Got it. We'll trace it. Keep your phone on." I sat in the dark living room, every sense sharpened. The ceiling fan clicked softly. The clock ticked like it was counting something down. I could feel the old combat mindset kicking in, the kind that maps exits and calculates response time. I checked on Mason again, still asleep, his breathing steady. I sat on the floor beside his bed for a while, my hand resting near his blanket. Not because I didn't trust the locks, but because I didn't trust fate. The next day, Jensen called again. "We traced the number. It's registered to a prepaid phone bought yesterday at a store 10 miles from your house." "Let me guess," I said. "No cameras at the checkout." "Exactly. But we have her license plate from earlier this week, showing her near your neighborhood. We'll put a patrol car on your street." I thanked her, hung up, and walked outside. The morning air was cold, crisp, silent. Too silent. Across the street, I spotted a blue sedan parked with tinted windows. It could have been anyone's car, but my instincts didn't buy coincidences. I walked down the driveway and stopped just short of the sidewalk. The car engine started and pulled away. I noted the plate number out of habit and texted it to Jensen. That night, I barely slept. My body was calm, but my brain was on constant alert. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge, felt amplified. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again, the motion alert from the garage. I opened the camera feed. This time, there was movement, a shadow slipping near the side door, the faint outline of a figure. My hand went for my pistol. I moved quietly through the hall, every step controlled, every breath steady. At the end of the corridor, I stopped, listening. Then came a faint knock at the back door. Not frantic, not random. 2 short knocks, 1 long, deliberate. I knew that rhythm. It was the same knock Brianna used when we were kids. The knock hit my nerves like an electric jolt. 2 short, 1 long, exactly how she used to signal me when we were kids sneaking back home after curfew. I kept my back against the wall, pistol low, safety off, waiting for movement on the other side. The security lights flicked on through the back window, cutting through the darkness. A familiar voice whispered, "Liv, it's me, open up." I didn't move. "You shouldn't be here, Brianna." Her tone shifted, almost pleading. "I just want to talk. Please. You don't understand what you've started." "May?" I watched the feed on my phone, her figure in the backyard, pale under the motion light, hair tangled from the wind. She looked desperate, but I'd seen enough interrogations to know how desperation could be performed. "Go home," I said flatly. "Home?" she snapped, her voice turning sharp. "You kicked me out of my home?" "That wasn't your home," I said. "You don't get to call it that." Silence. Then she muttered, "You always think you're saving someone. You're not saving him, Olivia. You're ruining him." I stayed still, listening to the scrape of her boots on the concrete as she backed away. The motion light timed out and went dark. After a few minutes, I heard a car door slam, then the sound of an engine fading into the distance. I didn't sleep. I waited until sunrise before finally putting the gun down. When Mason woke up, I pretended everything was normal. Pancakes, orange juice, cartoons, the small lies that keep a kid's world from collapsing. "Etni?" "Nu," Detective Jensen called. "We had a patrol check your area last night. Your sister's car was spotted near your block around 2:30. We'll log it. If she shows up again, call immediately." "I already knew she was here," I said. "She used to knock like that when we were kids." "That's not a coincidence," Jensen replied. "She's trying to get inside your head. Don't let her." Easier said than done. That afternoon, I reviewed the footage from the night before, every motion trigger, every angle, and that's when I saw something that made my stomach twist. The camera in Mason's room had caught the faint reflection of light across the backyard window around 2 a.m., the exact time Brianna was outside. She'd been standing there, watching. I turned off the playback. My hands were steady, but my chest burned with anger I hadn't felt since deployment. In combat, you're taught to assess the threat before reacting. But this wasn't combat. It was personal. I decided to reinforce the house. I replaced the locks with coded keypads, installed deadbolts on every door, and upgraded the motion sensors. Mason followed me around with his small toolbox, pretending to help. When he asked if we were in danger, I told him, "We're just being smart, like soldiers do." "I do." That night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Mom, Do you still love Aunt Bree? It hit harder than I expected. I love the sister I used to have, I said. Not the one who hurt you. He nodded slowly. I miss the nice version. So do I, baby, I said quietly. Once he fell asleep, I opened the new footage log again, scanning each clip. I wasn't looking for Brianna this time. I was studying my own behavior, my tone, my words around Mason. I needed to know if he felt safe again. Every military report starts with accountability, and this was no different. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A video message this time. I hit play. It was footage of me, taken from outside my kitchen window. The angle was shaky, but it clearly showed me sitting at the table, working on my laptop earlier that evening. A female voice whispered off camera, "See how she watches? Always watching, always paranoid." I paused the clip. My reflection in the screen stared back at me, calm but hollow. This wasn't just about control anymore. She was escalating. I called Jensen immediately. She's recording me now. What do you mean? I just got a video of myself through the kitchen window, sent from an unknown number. I'll send a tech team to retrieve the file, she said. Do not delete it. And Olivia, don't confront her. She's baiting you. By 1:30 a.m., 2 officers arrived. One of them, a young tech guy, copied the video and checked for metadata. No GPS tag, he said. She scrubbed it, but we'll triangulate the sender through the tower log. Will that help? I asked. It's something, he replied. When they left, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the window she'd filmed through. Outside, the yard looked peaceful. The swing on the old oak tree moved gently in the wind. It was almost beautiful if I didn't know who had been standing there, filming us. At 6 a.m., I got a text from Marcus, the sergeant who'd helped me earlier. You okay? Heard there was an incident. I called him back. She's escalating, watching us, recording, sending videos. Then, it's time to push the legal side harder, he said. Get the family advocacy program involved. You're still technically under active duty. They can coordinate with CPS and civilian courts. I don't want this spreading across the base, I said. I've got a reputation to keep. Howden? Olivia, this isn't about your record, it's about your kid. He was right again. By noon, I was sitting in the base legal office, talking to Captain Harlow from FAP. She'd seen a lot of messy family situations, but the hidden camera part made her eyebrows lift. You've got strong evidence, she said. We'll help you file the military protective order and flag this for dependent risk. That'll give you extra coverage. Coverage? Meaning if she approaches Mason or the residence again, it falls under both civilian and federal jurisdiction. She won't get a slap on the wrist. I signed the forms. As I handed them back, Harlow said, You handled this like a soldier. Calm, methodical. That's rare when family's involved. I gave a small smile. It's the only way I know. That evening, Mason and I went to the park to clear our heads. He kicked a soccer ball around while I sat on the bench scanning the area out of habit. At one point, he waved and yelled, Watch this, Mom. He kicked the ball high, it soared over the fence, landing near the parking lot. He ran to get it, and for a brief moment, I relaxed. Then I saw her, standing beside the lot, hands in her pockets, sunglasses on even though the sun was already setting. Brianna, watching him. I was on my feet before I realized it. She saw me, smiled faintly, and got into her car. The same blue sedan from before. When Mason came running back, ball in hand, he said, I think someone was looking at me. I forced a calm smile. It's fine, sweetheart. But my stomach twisted as I guided him toward the car. The ride home was quiet. My phone buzzed once another message. Same unknown number. I didn't open it right away. Not until Mason was asleep. When I finally did, it was just text this time. You can protect him from me, but not from what he remembers. My training told me to treat it as evidence. But as a mother, all I felt was the cold weight of truth in that sentence. Because she was right about one thing, memory doesn't heal like skin does. By morning, my house felt more like a command post than a home. I made coffee strong enough to wake the dead, double-checked the door locks, and started the day like every other mission I'd ever led, by preparing for chaos. Mason was still asleep in my bed. I left the TV on low in the living room, white noise, so he wouldn't wake up to silence. At 8 a.m., I was at the sheriff's office again. The lobby smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Detective Jensen walked in holding a folder that looked heavier than it should. "We got the cell trace," she said. "All signs point to your sister." I nodded. "What happens now?" "We escalate. The DA will review the video and the text today. Once we get a warrant, she's legally barred from coming within 100 yards of you or your son." "She's already breaking the order," I said. Jensen sighed. "That's why we're moving fast. But it's gotta go by the book. You know that better than anyone." She wasn't wrong. The Army had taught me that procedure keeps people alive. But patience wasn't my strongest skill anymore. While she copied the footage and printed new evidence logs, she said quietly, "You'd be surprised how often family cases look like combat reports. Fear, control, repeated exposure, and cover-ups. The difference is, these battlefields don't show up on maps." "I'm done with battlefields," I said. Jensen gave a short smile. "You might think that, Sergeant, but war tends to follow people who know how to survive it." End quote. Back home, Mason was drawing in the kitchen. Crayon streaks of blue and green filled the page, a house with a sun and stick figures. One of them was smaller, the other taller, holding hands. I asked who it was. "That's us," he said. "And that's the fence. Nobody can come in." I nearly lost it right there. Instead, I nodded and said, "Looks perfect." Around lunchtime, a woman from CPS arrived, a social worker named Carol Lewis. She wore neutral colors and spoke in that calm, slow voice people use when they don't want to startle a wounded animal. "I'm here to do a welfare check," she said, flashing her badge. "Mind if I come in?" "Please," I said. She walked through the house, asked me questions, checked Mason's room, the locks, even the refrigerator. Standard protocol. I knew it by heart from my training on domestic risk intervention. When she finished, she sat across from me at the dining table. "Your son's lucky," she said. "You caught it early." "Early doesn't feel like the right word." "I know," she replied. "But most of the time, these cases go years before anyone believes the child. You've already done the hardest part, listening." She handed me a card. "If you feel unsafe tonight, call this number directly. We can arrange protective housing." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, though I had no intention of running. Not from my own house. After she left, Mason came over with his backpack. "Mom, can I go back to school tomorrow?" "You want to?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah. I miss my teacher." "Okay," I said. "But I'll drive you there and pick you up. No buses for now." He nodded, satisfied. For him, it was just another day returning to normal. For me, it was another day watching the perimeter. By 3 p.m., Jensen called again. "We got the warrant. Local deputies are en route to bring her in for questioning." "And cops. What do I do?" "Stay home. Keep your phone close. They'll let you know when it's done." I hung up and tried to breathe. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the system was working, but that illusion lasted about an hour. At 4:20, my neighbor knocked on the door. "Olivia," she said nervously. "I saw your sister outside earlier. She was parked by the stop sign. She drove off when she saw me watching." I thanked her, closed the door, and called Jensen immediately. "She's circling the block," I said. "We've got a unit near you," Jensen replied. "Stay inside. We'll handle it." When the patrol car finally came through, Mason was on the couch watching cartoons. The flashing lights through the blinds made him jump. "Is it her again?" he whispered. "No," I said gently. "It's the police. They're helping us." He didn't look convinced, but he nodded and hugged his knees. An hour later, Jensen called again. "They found her car outside a gas station. She's in custody for violation of the order and harassment. We'll hold her for questioning tonight." I closed my eyes for a second. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "She's already spinning the story, saying you're framing her, manipulating evidence, all of it." "I expected that," I said quietly. The rest of the evening passed in slow motion. I made dinner, read Mason a story, and waited for the next call. Around 9, it came. "Olivia, this is Assistant DA Chavez," the man said, voice clipped but steady. "We reviewed the footage. There's enough probable cause for formal charges, child endangerment, physical abuse, and violation of a protective order. We'll move forward with arraignment tomorrow." I sat in silence for a second, the words landing like distant artillery. Understood, I said finally. You did the right thing, he added. It's never easy when it's family. No, sir, I replied. It's not. All a pink. After the call, I went to check on Mason. He was asleep, sprawled across the bed, one arm over his stuffed bear. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet I used to crave on deployment but now distrusted. I walked to the living room window and looked outside. A police cruiser idled down the street, headlights washing over the mailbox, then fading into darkness. The air smelled like rain. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe a little deeper. But as I turned off the light, my phone vibrated again, a notification from the security app. Motion detected at front porch. I checked the feed. Just a small package by the door. No person in sight. I opened it carefully, expecting another legal notice. Instead, inside was a plain envelope. No return address. No markings. Just one piece of paper folded neatly inside. It read, "You think you've won. You've only made me stronger." No signature. I stood there for a long time, holding that paper, my jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Then I walked straight to the shredder and fed it through. There was no need to keep threats from ghosts that no longer belonged in this house. I turned off the lights and went back upstairs, listening to the rhythm of my son's breathing. Every sound, every heartbeat, every creak of the house told me the same thing: this wasn't over. But it didn't need to be over tonight. Tonight, he was safe. And that was enough to keep the soldier in me awake and ready. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and old nerves. I'd been in plenty of government buildings before, but this one carried a different kind of tension, the kind where everyone was pretending not to look at each other. Mason was at school under CPS supervision for the day, which left me to face what came next, the first hearing. I sat on the hard wooden bench outside the courtroom, watching lawyers pass by with stacks of files, talking too fast, smiling too little. When they called my name, I stood up and straightened my uniform jacket. Not for pride, just armor. Inside, Brianna was already seated. She wore a pastel blazer, hair perfectly straightened, eyes swollen from what I could only assume were strategic tears. Her attorney, a man who looked like he got paid by the frown, whispered something to her before glancing at me. "Miss Cortez," the judge began, "this is an emergency protective order hearing and review of custody." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. The DA presented the footage, the text messages, the witness reports. When the video started playing, the room went dead quiet. The sounds were faint but clear, the crying, the slap, the words she whispered to him. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. When it ended, Brianna leaned forward, voice trembling. "That video's edited," she said. "She's framing me. Olivia's always been controlling. She doesn't want me around her son because she's jealous." The judge tilted his glasses down. "Jealous?" "Yes," Brianna said, her tone sharpening. "She's been obsessed with being perfect her whole life. The soldier, the mother, the hero. But she's not. She's unstable. Ask anyone at her base. She's paranoid and violent. She once pulled a gun on me over an argument. I kept my composure. That's a lie," I said evenly. The gun was locked and the argument was about her showing up drunk while my son was asleep. Her lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, my client has evidence that Miss Cortez suffers from post-traumatic stress and anger management issues related to her military service." That line was rehearsed, like he'd been waiting for it. The judge glanced at me. "Miss Cortez, have you received treatment for PTSD?" "Yes," I said. "I did. I completed my therapy sessions 2 years ago after my last deployment. My evaluations are clear." "So you admit you were treated," the lawyer said quickly. "I admit I believe in mental health," I replied, my voice flat. Which is more than I can say for someone who calls abuse discipline. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Brianna's jaw clenched. The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the end, the judge upheld the order no contact with Mason, pending psychological evaluation. But he also ordered a family assessment to review both parties' fitness. It wasn't a total victory. In family court, nothing ever is. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Brianna walked right up to me before the deputies could intervene. Her voice was low, venom hidden behind a calm smile. "You really think the law's going to protect you?" she said. "You might have fooled them, but you can't hide from what you are. Mason's going to grow up just like me." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The deputies escorted her away, and I watched as she climbed into the back of a police car like she owned the moment. Back home, I sat at the table with a stack of papers, the order, the reports, the psychological assessments I'd have to complete again just to prove I was stable. It was the kind of bureaucracy soldiers know too well. You fight the battle, then you fight the paperwork. Marcus called that night. How bad was it? She's playing the mental health card, I said. He grunted. Classic move. People don't know what real trauma looks like, they only know how to weaponize it. She's good at it, I said quietly. So are you, he replied. You just don't use it to destroy people. Later, as Mason ate dinner, he asked, Did Aunt Bree go to jail? Not exactly, I said carefully. But she can't come near us anymore. He nodded and looked down at his plate. She's mad at me, isn't she? No, I said. She's mad at herself. She just doesn't know it yet. That night, while cleaning the kitchen, I found something under the refrigerator, a small folded note, dusty and forgotten. The handwriting stopped me cold. It was Brianna's. Don't trust what you don't see. I stood there staring at it, wondering when she'd slipped it there. Before the first incident? After? It didn't matter. It was her kind of message, half threat, half riddle. The next morning, I took Mason to his therapist, Dr. Alvarez. She specialized in trauma recovery for military families, which was fitting since both of us were now veterans of different kinds of wars. Mason sat quietly on the couch while she spoke to me in her calm, measured tone. His fear is receding, she said, but it's replaced by guilt. He thinks he's responsible for his aunt getting in trouble. He's not, I said. I know that, and you know that. But children his age often try to make sense of chaos by blaming themselves. You'll need to reinforce that he did the right thing by speaking up. After the session, I stopped by the base legal office again to update Captain Harlow. She reviewed the court's decision and frowned. She's playing this strategically, she said. By questioning your mental stability, she's trying to create a parallel narrative, make the judge doubt who the real danger is. She won't win, I said. She's counting on your anger, Harlow warned. That's how she'll trap you. Don't let her see you lose control. That advice stayed with me all day. By evening, Mason was in bed, and I was sorting paperwork when the phone rang. Jensen's number. She's out on bail, she said flatly. I closed my eyes. Already? Temporary release, pending evaluation. Her lawyer filed an appeal claiming bias in the arrest. She's restricted by GPS monitor, but still she's out. I didn't panic. Not anymore. I just felt that familiar shift, the one I'd felt before every mission. The calm before action. Keep the patrol near your street, I said. We're on it, Jensen replied. But she's unpredictable. Just stay aware. Au revoir. I hung up, checked the security app, double-locked the doors, and placed the pistol on the nightstand. Mason was asleep again, curled under the blanket, the same one that used to hide his fear. I brushed his hair back gently, whispering, You're safe. The moonlight spilled through the blinds, and for a brief moment, I almost believed it myself. Then, faintly, from outside, a car engine idled. Not close, just near enough to hear. I turned off the lamp, stood by the window, and watched. A blue sedan. Same as before. Parked 2 houses down, lights off, engine running. My pulse didn't race this time. I just reached for the phone and pressed record on the camera feed, because instinct told me one thing. Brianna was never going to stop pretending this was about love. For her, it was always about control. And now, control was slipping away. The next morning started like any other coffee, silence, the sound of Mason's spoon clinking against his cereal bowl, but everything about the air felt heavy. I could still picture that blue sedan idling outside last night. I hadn't told Mason about it. He'd been through enough fear already, and I wasn't about to let her shadow crawl back into his head. At 9 a.m., I met Detective Jensen again at the precinct. She was flipping through Brianna's file, her pen tapping against the desk. You know, she said, I've seen a lot of siblings turn on each other, but this one's different. It's personal for her. It's always been personal, I said. She's been competing with me since we were kids. Jensen leaned back. Tell me about that. I hesitated. But if this case was going to move forward, she needed to understand what kind of woman Brianna really was. Our dad was military. I started. He raised us like recruits, not daughters. Chores, rules, punishments. If we cried, he called it weakness. When I turned 18, I enlisted. Brianna stayed behind and called me a coward for running off to hide in a uniform. Jensen nodded, jotting notes. And your mom? She left when we were 10, I said. After that, it was just us and Dad's version of discipline. He'd make us stand at attention for hours if we messed up. Brianna hated it. I learned to adapt. She learned to hate authority. The detective sighed. So when you became the authority figure, she decided to break me instead, I said. Except she couldn't touch me, so she went after my son. Jensen closed the file. That gives her motive, but not justification. What she did still counts as aggravated abuse. I don't need justification, I said. I just need it to stop. Later that afternoon, I picked Mason up from school. His teacher, Mrs. Collins, stopped me by the gate. He's doing better, she said softly. Smiling more, participating in class. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I smiled, but I noticed her eyes shift to my uniform, then quickly away. Pity, respect, fear. I'd seen all three before. Civilians never know what to feel around someone who's both a soldier and a parent in crisis. On the drive home, Mason hummed along to the radio. Then he said something that made my grip tighten on the wheel. Mom, Aunt Bree said once that she wanted to make me strong like you, but it didn't feel like that. I kept my eyes on the road. You don't make someone strong by hurting them, Mason. You make them strong by showing them they can stand up again. He thought about it for a second, then nodded. So, you made me strong, not her. Exactly, I said. That night, I found myself pulling out an old photo album. There we were, two little girls in matching dresses, holding hands at the county fair. Brianna had cotton candy all over her face, laughing. I stared at that picture for a long time. Somewhere between that day and now, she'd turned her pain into poison. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Heard from the DA. Case looks solid. She's got no leg to stand on. I replied, don't underestimate her. She's never needed both legs to start a fire. An hour later, I got an email from my lawyer. Brianna's defense had filed a motion claiming mutual psychological trauma and requested a family mediation session before trial. It was a trick, a chance for her to confront me under the guise of therapy. I called Harlow on Base Legal. Tell me this is a joke. Unfortunately not, she said. The judge can allow mediation if both parties share family ties and psychological history. It's designed to promote reconciliation. I laughed bitterly. Reconciliation? The woman ducked, taped my kid's mouth shut. I know, Olivia, Harlow said carefully. But sometimes, showing up is better than refusing. The court sees cooperation as strength. Fine, I said. Let them see strength. 2 days later, I was sitting in a neutral office, white walls, fake plants, and the kind of neutral furniture that's supposed to make everyone calm. The mediator, a woman named Ellen, looked like she spent her mornings meditating over herbal tea. She smiled too much. Thank you both for being here, she began. This is a safe space to express feelings without judgment. Jeanne, Brianna sat across from me, wrists crossed, her tone dripping with practiced calm. I'm only here because I want peace, she said. I want my family back. I didn't respond. I just watched her. Every blink, every twitch, every fake tear. Ellen nodded. That's good. Olivia, do you share that goal? I want safety, I said flatly. Peace comes after that. For a while, Ellen asked questions that sounded like they came from a self-help podcast. What do you need from each other to move forward? What does forgiveness mean to you? I almost laughed. Forgiveness? That word didn't belong here. Finally, Brianna leaned forward, her mask slipping just enough. You know, Liv, you think you're so righteous. You think being a soldier makes you better than everyone, but you're broken just like me. You just hide it behind discipline and medals. I didn't rise to it. I may be broken, I said, but I don't break children. End of quote. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Even Ellen stopped writing notes for a moment. After the session, as I stood to leave, Brianna whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "He's still my nephew. You can't erase that." I looked her in the eyes and said, "You already did." On the drive home, the sky opened up with rain. Mason was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, his hair sticking to his forehead, holding an umbrella twice his size. "Mom, you're soaked," he laughed. I smiled, kneeling to hug him. "Yeah, well, soldiers don't melt." We went inside, dried off, and made grilled cheese for dinner. For the first time in weeks, the house felt warm again, like a place that belonged to us, not her. Later that night, while Mason was asleep, I sat on the couch scrolling through the camera app. Nothing unusual, no movement, no shadows, just quiet. Then, at 11:42 p.m., a notification popped up. New video detected. Cloud backup accessed. No. My stomach sank. I opened the log. The backup file, the one that held every video of her abuse, had been accessed remotely from an unrecognized IP address. Someone had hacked into it. I didn't panic. I just closed the laptop, stood up, and went to check on Mason. He was sleeping soundly, safe for now. But I knew exactly who had taken that footage. And I also knew she wasn't trying to erase her guilt, she was trying to use it. The courthouse was colder this time. Not because of the air conditioning, but because I knew this was the day everything would come out, no more hiding behind lawyers or carefully crafted lies. Mason's therapist had testified by affidavit. CPS had finished their investigation. And Brianna was about to face the truth she'd spent her whole life running from. I walked through the metal detector with a quiet calm that only years in the military can teach you. I'd been through combat briefings before raids, interrogations, and funerals. None of them felt as suffocating as this hallway lined with reporters whispering the word soldier like it was both my title and my crime. Marcus was there, waiting outside the courtroom. He looked up from his phone. "You ready?" "I've been ready since the night she touched him," I said. He gave a short nod. "Remember, truth doesn't need volume, just precision." "How?" Inside, Brianna sat at the defense table, looking every bit the wounded victim her lawyer needed her to be. Soft cardigan, minimal makeup, clutching a tissue like it was evidence of her innocence. When the bailiff called order, she didn't look at me. But she didn't have to. I could feel her watching from the corner of her eye, measuring how calm I looked, trying to find weakness in my silence. The DA opened first. "Your Honor, this case isn't about sibling rivalry or family disagreement. It's about a child's safety, systematically violated by someone who used trust as a weapon." He played the footage. Again, the same images I'd forced myself to memorize. The slap, the whisper, the fear in Mason's eyes. But this time, it wasn't me watching alone on a phone, it was a room full of strangers hearing the small, broken sobs of an 8-year-old. The defense objected, claiming the video lacked verified authenticity. The judge denied it. The room was silent except for the audio. And when it ended, nobody looked at Brianna, not even her lawyer. The DA called me to the stand next. I swore in and sat down, back straight, hands folded, like I'd been trained to do in every military briefing. "Miss Cortez," the DA began, "what led you to install the camera?" "I noticed changes in my son," I said. "Fear, nightmares, silence. Things no child hides unless they're scared." "And when you saw the footage, what was your immediate response?" "I froze," I said. "Then I planned. You can't save someone by panicking. You do it by following procedure." The judge nodded slightly, approving my composure. The defense attorney stood, smiling like he thought charm could outsmart evidence. "Miss Cortez, you've served multiple deployments, correct?" "Yes." "Would you say your experiences overseas affected your mental state?" "Of course. War affects everyone who's ever been near it." End of 20. "So, is it fair to say you may have heightened paranoia? Maybe a tendency to misinterpret ordinary events as threats?" I didn't blink. I didn't imagine bruises. I didn't imagine screams. He paused, realizing his script wasn't working. "But you recorded her, correct? Without consent?" "Yes." "So, you broke her privacy." "She broke my son," I said quietly. The judge didn't reprimand me. He just gestured for the next question. When my testimony ended, Brianna's lawyer called her to the stand. She took her time walking up small, slow steps, like she wanted the jury to see fragility. Her voice was soft when she began. "I love my nephew," she said. "I never hurt him. Olivia twisted everything. She's always been obsessed with control." The DA handed her a photo. "This is a still frame from the video. You're holding a belt. What were you doing?" She swallowed. "Teaching discipline." He'd been lying. End of. The DA's tone stayed calm. Do you believe hitting a child until they cry is discipline? She hesitated. I was raised that way. He nodded slowly. Exactly. The courtroom was dead silent, the kind of silence that swallows lies whole. When the defense tried to redirect, Brianna lost the composure she'd practiced. Her voice rose. You think you're all better than me? You think soldiers make good parents? She left her kid to chase medals while I was here picking up the pieces? The judge's gavel hit once. Miss Hale, control yourself. But she wasn't done. You're punishing me for caring. Everything I did to make him stronger. Someone had to toughen him up before he ended up weak like his mother. The words hung in the air like smoke. And just like that, her mask cracked. The DA didn't say another word. He didn't need to. When the recess was called, Jensen caught up with me in the hallway. That outburst just nailed her case shut. The jury doesn't forget rage, it rewrites it as guilt. I didn't need them to see guilt, I said. I just needed them to see her. By afternoon, the expert witnesses testified. Dr. Alvarez explained Mason's trauma symptoms, how they matched consistent abuse patterns. CPS confirmed the bruising timeline matched Brianna's stay in the house. Marcus testified that he'd reviewed the footage chain of custody personally. Every word stacked like armor between me and her. The defense tried one last angle, claiming the family's shared upbringing normalized corporal discipline. But the judge interrupted. This court doesn't confuse history with justification. Trauma passed down isn't tradition, it's negligence. When the judge finally recessed for deliberation, I stepped outside. The sun was blinding after hours under fluorescent lights. Marcus joined me on the courthouse steps, lighting a cigarette even though he'd quit years ago. You think it's over? He asked. It's never over, I said. It just stops hurting as much. He nodded, exhaling smoke into the wind. You ever think she could have turned out different? Every day, I said. But people like her don't want to change. They want to rewrite. An hour later, they called us back in. The jury filed in. Solemn. The four-person stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Brianna Hale, guilty on all counts of child endangerment and aggravated assault. Latin. There was no reaction from her. No tears. No screams. Just that same blank expression she used to wear when Dad punished us, quiet, detached, almost proud. The judge sentenced her to 7 years with mandatory counseling. No parole before 4. No contact with minors for life. As they led her away, she turned once, locking eyes with me. He'll remember me, she said. I didn't flinch. Not the way you want. Outside, reporters swarmed, but I didn't stop for questions. The headlines would write themselves. Army mom protects son, sister convicted in family abuse case. None of it mattered. The real story wasn't about justice, it was about survival. When I got home that night, Mason was already in bed, his stuffed bear tucked under his arm. I kissed his forehead, and for the first time in months, he didn't stir in his sleep. His breathing was even, calm. I sat by the window again, looking at the quiet street, the moon cutting a pale line across the driveway. The blue sedan was gone for good. In the stillness, I finally felt something I hadn't in years, peace that didn't feel like surrender. Not victory either, just the quiet relief of knowing the war inside my home was over. The kind of peace that doesn't need applause. The kind you earn by surviving. The first thing I noticed after the trial ended wasn't relief, it was silence. The kind that creeps into a house after months of noise, waiting for someone to fill it. Mason slept longer now. He laughed more too, but sometimes I'd catch him staring at the walls like he was waiting for a sound that never came. I recognized that look. It's what soldiers get after combat. The body's safe, but the mind's still dodging shrapnel. The Army gave me 30 days of family recovery leave. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I spent the first week trying to remember how to live without a threat. No patrols, no hearings, no lawyers, just laundry, morning coffee, and a kid who finally felt like a kid again. One morning, I drove Mason to school early. He was humming a tune I didn't recognize, tapping his fingers on the window. You know, he said, I don't get scared at night anymore. That's good, I said, keeping my eyes on the road. Yeah, he added, but sometimes I dream about her. She's just standing in the hallway, not doing anything. Just there. I glanced at him. What do you do when that happens? He shrugged. I tell her to leave, then she goes away. That's exactly what you should do, I said. After dropping him off, I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes. The instinct to scan for threats was still there. The parked cars, the shadows behind the school fence, but I was starting to realize something important. Maybe healing wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about learning to live without reacting to every ghost that passes by. When I returned to base for a debrief, Captain Harlow met me in her office. "You look better," she said, scanning me like a drill sergeant checking posture. "I sleep now," I replied. "Good. You'll need it. We're recommending you for a family resilience workshop. It's not punishment, it's paperwork." I smirked. "You know how much I love paperwork." Her smile softened. "You did everything right, Cortez. You followed protocol, you stayed composed, and you got your son justice. Don't underestimate what that means." "I didn't do it for meaning," I said quietly. "I did it so he could breathe again." Later that afternoon, I met Marcus for coffee near the base. He was out of uniform now, beard growing in, looking more civilian than soldier for once. He slid a small envelope across the table. "The DA's office asked me to give you this." End quote. I opened it. Inside was a photo of Brianna being transported to state prison. Hair pulled back, face blank. No rage, no sadness, nothing left. "She didn't even appeal," Marcus said. "I'm not surprised," I said. "She already got what she wanted." "What's that?" "Attention. Even in handcuffs, she's the center of the story." He nodded. "You think she ever comes back from that?" "No," I said. "But I'm not waiting around to find out." The following weeks were about routine. I started running again at dawn, the way I used to before deployments. Mason would join me sometimes, sprinting halfway down the block before stopping to catch his breath. I'd tell him, "Pace yourself, soldier," and he'd laugh like it was a game. At night, we watched movies together. Nothing heavy, just old comedies and cartoons. The kind that fills silence with laughter instead of tension. Slowly, the house started to feel like a home again. Then, one Saturday, a letter arrived. Official seal, Department of Corrections. My chest tightened before I even opened it. It wasn't a threat. It was a request. Inmate Brianna Hale has enrolled in mandatory rehabilitation and anger management counseling. She has requested the opportunity to write a formal apology letter to you and your son. I sat there staring at it. Mason was in the living room building a Lego helicopter. He looked up and said, "What's that?" "Just something from the state," I said, folding the letter. "Is it about her?" "Yeah," I said. "Is she sorry?" I paused. "She says she is." He nodded, clicking a piece into place. "That's good, I guess." I didn't reply. Some wounds don't need apologies, they just need time to scar. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the sky fade from orange to navy. The street was quiet, only the sound of a dog barking somewhere down the block. For the first time in years, I let myself think about our childhood without bitterness. There were good days, too. Days before everything turned toxic. Days when she was just my sister. The next morning, I started journaling again. The Army had always pushed mental logs, writing down your thoughts after missions, but this was different. I wasn't logging events. I was logging feelings. What it meant to forgive without forgetting. What it meant to move forward without pretending nothing happened. By week 3, Mason's therapist called to update me. "He's doing remarkably well," Dr. Alvarez said. "He still has moments of anxiety, but he's processing instead of suppressing." "That's more than most adults manage," I said. She laughed softly. "You've given him structure. That's his safety net." "I've given him discipline," I corrected. "Discipline isn't the opposite of love, Olivia," she said. "When it comes from you, it's the same thing." Those words stuck with me. Discipline and love. Two sides of the same coin. Maybe that was the real difference between me and Brianna. We were raised on punishment, not purpose. I learned to break that pattern. She didn't. A few days later, I took Mason to the base family picnic. It was loud and messy, kids chasing each other with face paint, soldiers manning the grill, wives gossiping near the lemonade stand. Normal chaos. Mason joined a group of boys tossing a football. He laughed so hard when he missed the catch that I almost forgot what his silence used to sound like. Harlow came over, holding a paper plate stacked with food. "Looks like he's fitting in." "Yeah," I said. "He's finally just being a kid." She nodded toward him. You did good, Cortez. Some people spend their whole lives running from their upbringing. You turned yours into armor. Armor's heavy, I said, but it beats being unprotected. How? That evening, after the picnic, Mason fell asleep in the car on the drive home. His head leaned against the window, mouth slightly open, peaceful. I glanced at him at a stoplight and felt that quiet wave of gratitude that comes when you realize the war might actually be over. Back home, I carried him inside, tucked him into bed, and stood by the doorway for a moment, just listening to his steady breathing. The house was clean, calm, and alive again. I went to the living room, turned on the porch light, and sat with a cup of coffee. No cameras, no alerts, no fear. Just the steady hum of normal life returning. The soldier in me still scanned the darkness out of habit, but now it wasn't to find danger. It was to confirm the peace I'd earned. And for once, there was nothing hiding in the shadows. Only quiet. Only stillness. Only the faint echo of a life rebuilding itself, one honest breath at a time. The last few weeks of leave went by quietly, the way peace should feel. Not dramatic, not triumphant, just still. Mason had started drawing again, filling his sketchbook with airplanes, tanks, and stick-figure soldiers. One morning, he handed me a page where a small soldier stood next to a kid with a big smile. "That's us," he said proudly. "You're the brave one. I'm the one who gets saved." I smiled and ruffled his hair. "You're the brave one, Mason. You told the truth when it mattered." That. He looked at me seriously. "But you taught me how." For a second, I couldn't speak. He didn't know it, but that one sentence healed more than any court ruling ever could. When my leave ended, I went back to base. The first thing I did was run drills with my squad. The sound of boots on gravel, the sharp commands, the sweat, all of it reminded me of why I joined in the first place. The Army had always given me order when my life was chaos. Now, it gave me balance. After the session, I found Harlow in her office signing off reports. She didn't look up when she said, "How's civilian life treating you?" "Less yelling, more coffee," I said. She grinned. "That's how healing starts." Then she added, "The Family Advocacy Program submitted your final report. They're recommending you for an internal mentoring role helping other soldiers deal with family trauma cases." I raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "As a court-martial," she said, "you handled your situation by the book. Calm, efficient, disciplined. We need more of that." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted distance from anything that even sounded like trauma. But another part, the soldier part, knew that turning pain into purpose was the only kind of revenge that actually changed anything. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Good," she replied, "because I already submitted your name." That afternoon, I picked Mason up from school. He ran into my arms like he hadn't done since before everything happened. "Guess what?" he said. "I got picked for class leader next week." "That's great, buddy," I said, hugging him tight. "What does a class leader do?" "Helps other kids when they're sad or scared," he said. "Kinda like you do." I laughed, though something in my chest tightened. It was strange how much sense kids made when adults couldn't. Later that night, I found myself going through an old storage box. Inside were photos, military commendations, and one envelope I hadn't touched in months, the letter from the Department of Corrections about Brianna's apology request. I hadn't responded, and I didn't plan to. But now, sitting alone with the house quiet, I opened it again. Part of me expected another manipulation, a half-hearted attempt to clear her conscience. But when I unfolded the letter, I realized it wasn't from her after all. It was from her counselor. "Miss Cortez, I am writing on behalf of your sister, Brianna Hale. She has expressed a desire to take responsibility for her actions, though she remains conflicted about what that means. She's been participating in trauma recovery sessions and cited your strength as part of her motivation to improve. Whether you choose to respond or not, she asks that you know one thing. She finally understands what love isn't." I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. There was no satisfaction in it, no triumph, just a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, for once, she was facing herself instead of everyone else. I didn't tell Mason about the letter. Some truths aren't for children, they're for the adults who built the fire in the first place. The next morning, I drove out to the small military cemetery on the edge of town. My father's grave was there, simple, unadorned, just a name, and 2 dates etched into granite I hadn't visited in years. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, the wind cutting through the trees, and said, "You raised soldiers, Dad," but only one of us learned what that meant. It wasn't anger anymore, just clarity. As I turned to leave, I noticed a young mother kneeling by another grave a few rows down, her son beside her, maybe 7 or 8. She was talking softly to the headstone, her boy placing a toy truck in the grass. For a brief second, it looked like a reflection of me and Mason, 2 survivors finding their way through silence. Back home, I made dinner while Mason worked on homework at the table. He was learning fractions, brow furrowed like it was life or death. "Math's harder than drills," he complained. "Not really," I said, slicing vegetables. "You just have to stay consistent. Same rule every time." "That's what you say about life," he said. "Then it must be true." End quote. He grinned, that crooked smile that used to be rare but now showed up more often than not. After he went to bed, I sat on the couch with a notebook, something I hadn't done since before deployment. I started writing not about war or pain or Brianna, but about lessons. What I'd learned about control, fear, love, and revenge. I wrote, "Revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about refusing to let them define you. The real victory is in rebuilding, not retaliating." Then I added, "Discipline taught me how to survive. Love taught me why it mattered." When I closed the notebook, I felt something close to peace. Not the fragile kind that breaks when life gets loud again, but the steady kind that comes from knowing you've done what you had to do and no longer need to look over your shoulder. The following weekend, Mason had a school assembly. Parents sat in the auditorium, whispering and waving at their kids. When his name was called for the class leader recognition, he stood on stage, nervous but proud. The teacher handed him a small certificate, and he scanned the crowd until he found me. He smiled, and I raised 2 fingers to my temple in a mock salute. He returned it, the way soldiers do, firm, deliberate, confident. Afterward, as we walked to the car, he said, "Mom, when I grow up, I think I want to be in the Army." I smiled. "Why's that?" "Because soldier protect people, like you did." "Dat, just remember," I said, "the strongest soldiers know when not to fight." He nodded, thinking hard about it, like kids do when they hear something that feels bigger than them. That night, after tucking him in, I stood by the doorway for a moment. The light from the hallway fell across his face, peaceful, unafraid. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was standing guard. I felt like I was home. There were no more cameras, no more courtrooms, no more ghosts pacing outside. Just the quiet hum of a house rebuilt from the ashes of something cruel. And somewhere deep down, I knew that this steady, ordinary quiet was the kind of revenge Brianna would never understand. Because peace, for people like her, is the one battle they never learn how to win.